Good evening, beloved, and welcome. Welcome one and all to this 34th gathering annually of Elmhurst University's YOM HASHOAH service of remembrance, and our annual guestship lecture. What we do here is a part of the life and blood, and as I say to the students all the time, this evening represents the soul of this institution. Founded as a German college for young men going into ministry, it has grown and changed and become this beautiful, amazing place that invites all communities of faith, of hope, of joy, into becoming and to learn, to take degrees, and to heal a broken world. And so with all those and the joy of what this night stands for and the power of what it means, in the midst of the world that is broken, and we all know those stories, but tonight we are focusing on 1933 to 1945, that period where our guest speaker was in a concentration camp. But to help get us going, I want to first ask you to thank, and I've already been told I need to mic her next year. Cindy gave beautiful music. Will you join me in thanking our cantor, Cindy, for the joy and the beauty of what she brings to all of us. And she will be with us in our Festival of Lights on May 7th in the chapel, our interfaith service that I hope you'll all come out to. This night, for me, stands as a testimony of life and hope. It does, with the sunlight coming in, and I'm sorry, hopefully in a few minutes it'll be gone, but it represents the strength and the vitality of this institution. At dinner tonight, we had our president, Dr. Troy Van Aken, and his wife, also Dr. Van Aken, to sit with some of the faculty and students, to be together, to imagine and to talk about what the Holocaust, and for us also, 20 students and faculty went to Washington, D.C. this past week to sit in the Holocaust and the African American Museum and to put those two together. It was a powerful weekend, and you're going to hear more about that. But tonight, we come together as a community of the university with family and friends outside of our campus community, from Chaim, from Fenwick High School, from other communities of faith, from people of no faiths, because we sit in a place where we want to understand and think and become. And I have had the joy of serving this institution as their chaplain for so long that one of the people that made me so welcome when I came from New York City was our rabbi here, Rabbi Stephen Bob. He has been a gift and a founding member of this work of the Holocaust Committee. He teaches with us, serves as our rabbi, and has been a great gift, not just for me, but for many people. And so it is in that light that we call the rabbi to call us to gather in the word of the tradition that he stands in and calls us out to begin this evening of YOM HASHOAH. Rabbi Bob.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. We have to study the Holocaust at Elmhurst University because the Holocaust stands as testimony against everything we stand for as a university and everything we stand for as a society. As a university, we have to believe, we want to believe in the value of learning. We hold that knowledge leads to virtue. We hold that Western civilization has value. We hold that religion in general and Christianity in particular have value. The Holocaust raises questions about the pursuit of knowledge. Before World War II, Germany stood at the center of Western civilization. Germany was the country of Kant and Hegel, of Beethoven and Bach, Goethe and Schiller. Germany was the center of the academic study of the Bible, the birthplace of modern physics. In this center of learning and culture, the Nazi Party came to power. The German devotion to knowledge and education did not prevent Germans from supporting the Nazis. Quite the opposite. The German state used this devotion to knowledge, engineering, and science to kill Jews and others more efficiently. The Holocaust raises questions about Western civilization. Western civilization rests on the premise that all individuals have value. The Nazis rejected this basic idea. The Nazis and their supporters did not believe that all people are created equal. The Nazis proclaimed that Jews, homosexuals, Roma are not people. The history of our university places upon us a particular obligation to respond to these questions. The founders of our university in 1872 were members of the German Evangelical Synod of North America. In the early days of our school, all courses were taught in German. The university imported its textbooks from Germany. Students spoke German among themselves, and one of the school year's special holidays was the Kaiser's birthday. Because the Holocaust stands as a testimony against everything we stand for as a university, and everything we stand for as a society, we have to confront it. We cannot ever make sense of the Holocaust, but we can hope to make sense of the meaning of leading our lives after the Holocaust. We should make remembering the Holocaust part of our religious life and part of our academic lives. Thank you.
I call on Dr. Abranis to come and help us by honoring light and beginning our lighting of our YOM HASHOAH gathering. Professor.
Who speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians? This question was not asked by a historian looking at instances of genocide. It was not asked by an Armenian advocate seeking recognition and justice. It was asked by Adolf Hitler, who asked it as a way of explaining why he did not think anyone would stop him as he ordered his army to slaughter anyone who got in his way when expanding into Poland. Well, tonight we speak of annihilation. Tonight we speak of the annihilation of Jews, the annihilation of Roma, the annihilation of lesbian and gay people, the annihilation of people with disabilities, both mental and physical, the annihilation of Jehovah's Witnesses, Freemasons, Slavs, Poles, Russians, political opponents, and anyone else the Nazis deemed the other. And tonight we listen to the first-hand account of one who was there so that we may remember, question, and act. Tonight we remember. And as we do, we light candles in honor of those murdered by the Nazis and in honor of those who put their own lives at risk to help rescue and liberate those facing persecution. As we say in Hebrew, Zichrono Livracha, may their memories be a blessing.
To help us with lighting, I invite all the students that were with faculty and I in Washington, D.C. this last week at the Holocaust Museum to come on up. Come forward, please. As we light the first candle, I invite the faculty that also joined these wonderful students up on stage, please. Those faculty, please come on up. we light 7 candles, or 6 million plus. That the Holocaust traditionally holds as those who were taken from life. For the 8th candle, we invite it to be lit for the 2 museums in Skokie and in Washington, D.C. And the 9th candle is lit for the future, for our collective future, for what we do. Call the community to a time of silence. Stay seated, but please, in silence. May their memory be for a blessing. Thank you, guys.
Ose shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu, le'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen, yase shalom, yase shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, oseh shalom bimroma. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen.
Those who stood on the podium represent the great call of Isaiah that is on the wall as you come in to the museum in Washington, D.C. You shall be a witness to my people. We had asked for, especially our speaker, that you would see these beautiful faces and faculty, that they are a witness to you and to what we believe we are called to do here at this institution. And so then, in that way, receive the benedictions of lights and candles. Receive the benediction of love and memory. Receive the benediction of blessing that we are given the honor to be here tonight. Amen. There has been a tradition growing in our community of asking a question about why we do this. And there are many answers to why this university reflects on the Holocaust. It has, as Rabbi Bob has offered, great history of depth. You see the list at the back of the program of the names of the people. There is a sense of awe and expectation every year at this time of what will this moment look like and be, and how we will be touched. And so in the last year, we've asked one of our faculty to reflect on that, Dr. Mary Kay Mulvaney, who is our head of our honors program and also in the English department. This year, we asked one of our instructors who teaches German and also genocide, Professor Summers, and I could not let this opportunity, because of the power and the joy of what I see all the time of the students that reflect and write. And so we asked Ambrosia to also offer a brief reflection on why. So, Professor Summers, there you are. We invite you to come to the stage, please, and then after, Ambrosia, please.
Dear students, colleagues, members of the community, honored guests. My name is Christine Summers, and I teach German and world literature here since 1996. I was asked by our chaplain to speak to the reasons why we teach the Holocaust here at Elmhurst, and he gave me 4 minutes. 4 minutes. I've been teaching courses in the Holocaust education program now for 5 years, and each year presents different challenges and learning opportunities. This class is never the same. This year is in particularly challenging because of ongoing wars and conflicts and the rise in anti-Semitism. Together, we will honor the memory of those who were murdered during the Shoah and pay tribute to those who survived and have made a better world for all of us. For me, it's personal. I grew up in that self-proclaimed anti-fascist Germany that was called the German Democratic Republic, just like our first chancelloress, Angela Merkel. And my high school was named for Ernst Thälmann, the leader of the German communists. After the Nazi seizure of power, the Communist Party was broken up, its members persecuted, and its chairman arrested in March 1933. Moabit Hannover Bautzen. After 11 years in solitary confinement, Ernst Thälmann was taken to Buchenwald and shot to death in the crematorium. Before and after the existence of the German Democratic Republic, my school was named for Johann Wolfgang Goethe, whose likeness stands now next to his contemporary Friedrich Schiller in front of the German National Theater in Weimar. Weimar and Buchenwald are located not far from each other, a symbol for the fact that a highly evolved culture can slide into darkest barbarism. We knew this as young students when we were taken on class trips that included visits to Goethe House in Weimar and to the concentration camp in Buchenwald. My students know that teaching of the unspeakable atrocities is not limited to one class and one semester. When teaching and studying German literature, history, business German, there's always a moment when we have to acknowledge that the legacy of those years and what led up to them is connected to everything we see. Joachim Gauck, born 1940, the then federal president of Germany and a pastor from my hometown, said in 2015, there is no German identity without Auschwitz. It's like walking the streets of any major German-speaking city, Vienna included, and seeing the Stolpersteine, or stumbling stones. There are more than 70,000 such memorial blocks laid in more than 1,200 cities and towns across Europe and Russia. Each commemorates a victim outside their last known freely chosen residence. The inscription on each stone begins, "Here lived," followed by the victim's name, date of birth, and fate. Internment, suicide, exile, or, in the vast majority of cases, deportation and murder. When we travel with students in our JTEM course to Berlin, Leipzig, Dresden, Prague, and Vienna, we see them everywhere and bow our heads to read. Unlike some other memorials that focus on specific persecuted groups, the Stolpersteine honor all victims of the Nazi regime, including Jewish, Sinti, Roma, disabled, dissident, and Afro-German and asocial citizens. Elie Wiesel's famous account of survival, Night, was titled in the original Yiddish, "Und die Welt hat geschwiegen," and the world stood silent. His speech that he gave in 1999 on the perils of indifference also is a stark reminder of what becomes of bystanders. If we need even stronger images, Jonathan Glazer's movie, A Zone of Interest, should be required watching. I'm going to quote from a famous speech by the federal president, Richard von Weizsäcker. He was born in 1920, and he gave the speech during the ceremony commemorating the 40th anniversary of the end of war in Europe and of National Socialist tyranny on May 8th, 1985, in the parliament of the then capital Bonn. The perpetration of this crime was in the hands of a few people. It was concealed from the eyes of the public, but every German was able to witness what his Jewish compatriots had to suffer, ranging from plain apathy and hidden intolerance to outright hatred. Who could remain unsuspecting after the burning of the synagogues, the plundering, the stigmatization with the Star of David, the deprivation of rights, the ceaseless violation of human dignity? Whoever opened his eyes and ears and sought information could not fail to notice that Jews were being deported. The nature and scope of the destruction may have exceeded human imagination, but in reality there was, apart from the crime itself, the attempt by too many people, including those of my generation who were young and were not involved in planning the events and carrying them out, not to take note of what was happening. There were many ways of not burdening one's conscience, of shunning responsibility, looking away, and keeping mum. When the unspeakable truth of the Holocaust then became known at the end of the war, all too many of us claimed that they had not known anything about it or even suspected anything. There's no such thing as the guilt or innocence of an entire nation. Guilt is, like innocence, not collective but personal. There is discovered or concealed individual guilt. There is guilt which people acknowledge or deny. Everyone who directly experienced that era should today quietly ask himself about his involvement then. The vast majority of today's population were either children then or had not been born. They cannot profess a guilt of their own for crimes that they did not commit. No discerning person can expect them to wear a penitential robe simply because they are Germans. But their forefathers have left them a grave legacy all of us, whether guilty or not, whether old or young, must accept the past. We are all affected by its consequences and liable for it. The young and old generations must and can help each other to understand why it is vital to keep alive the memories. It is not a case of coming to terms with the past. That is not possible. It cannot be subsequently modified or made undone. However, anyone who closes his eyes to the past is blind to the present. Whoever refuses to remember the inhumanity is prone to new risks of infection. End quote. But let's not forget that the Holocaust was not the first and unfortunately also not the last mass murder of a whole population in history. Let's learn about the warning signs: dehumanization, xenophobia, intolerance, scapegoating, and so many others, and beware the beginnings. Let's work together on proving Antonio Gramsci's sentence not true. History teaches, but it has no pupils. Thank you.
After returning from the Holocaust trip, I found myself affected by the experiences and discussions we had as a group. It was evident after observing the historical reviews of one of humanity's darkest chapters, how important it is for us all to sit back, reflect, and acknowledge the parallels in the modern world. The journey through museums, memorials, and discussions with fellow students has left a mark on my understanding of history, ethics and values, and the resilience of the human spirit. It was very striking to realize how medicine was misused and exploited to further the agenda of those in power during this time period. A lot of cruel experiments were performed on the prisoners in concentration camps. This hits close to home because in my home country, it was documented that an Albanian young girl who outrightly opposed the Nazis was sent to a concentration camp and then was forced to endure their medical experiments on brain and memory. They destroyed her memory by bombarding her with strong lights and sounds in a dark room and disrupting her sleep patterns. After the war was over and she was reunited with her family spent close to 25 years afterwards with no avail in helping her memory. This was then made into a book and a film called The Circle of Memory in 1987. This highlights the critical need for vigilance and against misuse in medical experiments. In Europe, the memory of the Holocaust is very well displayed and preserved. I've walked into the streets of Rome where the cobblestone streets of the Jewish neighborhood are engraved with the names of those who departed for the concentration camps. In Greece, there is a beautiful museum on top of the Castle of Ioannina, which used to be a medical center, where during the war, Jews from all over Greece were gathered and then sent on trains to concentration camps. This building has now been turned into a Holocaust museum. My home country, Albania, was considered a safe haven for the Jewish community during World War II, where no Jews were turned into the Nazis, but they were protected and blended in with Albanian families. The news of Albania being a safe country attracted Albert Einstein to spend several months in the country, obtain an Albanian passport, and then travel to the US with that document as an Albanian citizen. Visiting the World War II exhibition in the National Museum of Tirana, to my surprise, I realized this fact about Albert Einstein that I wasn't aware of if I did not go to this museum. The American continent was fortunate enough to not be directly involved in this breach of humanity. But That is why it is important to keep the memory alive for generations to come, so this dark chapter in history does not repeat again. After discussions with other students, it is evident how important it is to keep the memory of the Holocaust for generations to come. It's a reminder of how ethics and values can be shifted, and the need we must have to uphold ethics and values in the face of adversity. By confronting the past and actively working to reflect, we honor the victims and strive to create a more just and compassionate world.
I think you have a sense of some of our wonderful faculty and amazing students. And Ambrosia is going to medical school next year. She will make an amazing doctor. We're so thankful. Will you join me in, again, thanking our professor and Ambrosia? Thank you both. Tonight represents the culmination of some hard work by a great group of folks, a committee that I've had the joy of being part of. And I didn't put this in the script, but I see that I think there are two of our founding members here. Don't look at me like that, Rabbi. The Rabbi and Wally, are you able to stand, please? Are there any other founding members of this Holocaust committee on the team today? Will you join me? These are the people that constructed the hope of what this night would look like 37 years ago. Teaching classes, taking students on trips, going back and forth, coming around the table like this tonight. And I have the joy of getting to introduce people all the time. But tonight, there are two people actually that can do a much better job than me than introducing our guests tonight. And so we've asked Rabbi Stephen Bob, founding member of our committee, and also the father-in-law of our wonderful esteemed speaker. Son-in-law, excuse me. Come on up, Rabbi.
I am my own grandpa, yes. Here at Elmhurst University, we respect time. It marches in one direction. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to introduce many speakers. I've never felt as honored as I feel tonight. It's a terrific honor for me to introduce Eric Blaustein, our speaker. As you know, he's my father-in-law. I've known him for almost 50 years. He is the most educated person I know. If I have a question about European history, ancient languages, world geography, or archaeology, I know who to ask. Tonight, he's not here to hold forth on any of these academic topics or to talk about his long career as a civil engineer. I'm sure he'd be happy afterwards to tell you about things that he oversaw. But tonight, he's going to share with us stories of his childhood in Nazi Germany. In 2024, it's a rare opportunity to hear from a Holocaust survivor. A survivor who can say, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced. Please join me in welcoming my hero, Eric Blaustein.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Now, don't tell me you don't understand my German accent. I have been at this affair several times. And I was flattered to be invited to talk here. Now, as those things go, the moment I was nearly ready to give my talk, I got sick. So you see me humping around here and trying to look good. So I thank you all for coming, and it's possible my last lecture I give. I do that for 30 years. First, I want to straighten something out. The program says I was in Buchenwald. Well, that's true, but I was in Buchenwald for a day and a half. After that, I was sent into outer camps of Buchenwald, and that's one of the reasons that I'm here and speak. I wouldn't have survived Buchenwald. So prisoners created a situation that I got out of the camp, and I found myself being an Italian outside, and I don't speak Italian. So having straightened that out, let me talk about myself. I was born in 1926 in central Germany. I was born into an average middle-class family. And at the time I was born, that Germany was a Republic of Weimar, which was pretty much like the United States, a free country where everybody had citizen rights and could do and speak what he wanted. As I said, I grew up in a middle-class family, and I became a pretty freelancing little boy. We lived in a very nice neighborhood, and my father was a vice president of a corporation, so nothing was missing. And then I had to start school in 1933, and that coincided practically with Hitler taking over the government of Germany. Now, I mentioned Germany was a republic which was pretty free for its citizens, but political situations, economical situation outside Germany and the whole world was pretty bad. In 1920, we were not so great here in the United States either, and the result in Germany was with the political systems that they had every few months a different government, and things pretty nasty for people who live, and there were demonstrations and uproars and all kinds of things. I didn't know anything of that. My father had a good job, we had a good income, we lived in a beautiful neighborhood. And I started school in 1933. Now, it was not the first time that I went into a school which had suddenly only new teachers, and those teachers were all Nazi uniforms. Now, I feel that Germany was not like Poland and Russia and Ukraine and all those countries. When German troops moved in there in 1939 and so in 1940, the Holocaust was there. Apparently, Hitler and the Nazi Party believed that Germany was too civilized and had to be conditioned to watch first the execution of the Jewish population. So there were anti-Semitic riots and things like that, but they were not so bad, okay? However, bad enough for those who got into it. Now, Jews had all the citizen rights they had before, only Hitler was starting to cut down on that. When Hitler became chancellor, anti-Semitism became official government policy. There were educational situations in school where kids were told to be nasty to Jewish students and so on. There were also riots and attacks on Jewish citizens, and the police stood by. Jewish people couldn't do very much about it, and I frankly didn't know that I was Jewish. I had a vague idea, but I didn't know what that was. I was a little German boy who went to school, and things were all right. Now, in 1933, I was actually the teacher's pet even. They were very nice to me, and I could read very fast. And I was a little boy who was liked. But this lasted until 1935. And kids in another class decided to beat up that Jewish guy who was in another class. So on my way home one day, I was attacked by some boys from another class, together with one boy from my class who had pointed me out. What those guys didn't realize the kids were not that anti-Semitic, and some kids from my class, boys from my class, noticed that I was under attack, and class loyalty was stronger than anti-Semitism. So before I really could be beaten up, there appeared about 20 of my classmates and defended me. So my attackers actually got more clappers than I did. But I learned so that the poison of Nazism had gone down into the population already, because the next day, so same kids in class who had valiantly defended me suddenly stayed away from me. Now, there was one boy who was a good friend of mine, and he was staying with me and hanging out, and I asked him, what happened? He said, well, they talked to their parents, and their parents asked, who was that boy you defended? And they told him who you are. And their parents told him, stay away from that guy, he's trouble. And I asked that fellow about, what about you? He said, my father told me if I don't stay your friend, now when you need it, I couldn't be his son. So this boy was the only boy who stayed with me as long as I was going to school. So all around me, things were going haywire, and my parents tried very hard to protect me. They didn't want me to know about that. But kids 6, 7, and 8 years old are pretty smart. I knew what was going on. I mentioned I vaguely knew I was Jewish. I didn't know exactly what it meant. But there are 3 things which I remember which happened. My grandfather, who was an Orthodox Jew, was beaten up. Now, he was the smartest man in the family. He came home and said, in a country where tax-paying citizens who obeys all the laws and is nice to the poor and so on, and if he can be treated like that, I don't want to stay. And within 4 weeks, he left and went to what was then Palestine. My grandmother stayed with us. And even though I wasn't to know what had happened, I know my grandfather had been beaten up. That is the one thing I still remember very well. Now, the second, my father lost his job. My father was a vice president in the accounting department of a department store, international department store facility. And they decided they couldn't have a Jewish vice president, he couldn't represent them. So It just was overnight. We were on vacation, and he joined us on vacation. Didn't say anything until we got back to our home. I said, well, he was laid off. Well, wasn't so bad either. He was a known accountant, and he became a public accountant, so we did pretty well. And but the thing which really hurt me was that they threw us out of our apartment. Now, I liked the playground there with the sandbox and all those things, and suddenly we had to move out because, again, they did not want to have Jewish tenants. It hit me slowly to find out that I was not a loved citizen in this country either. So and we couldn't find an apartment. Nobody wanted to rent to Jews. Until my father, who had been a German officer in World War I, ran into a colleague of him who was actually the landlord of my grandparents. And he asked him, how are things going? My father told him what was going on. And it happened that this gentleman was also the head of the German war veterans organization in the city. And my father was a member there. And this gentleman told him, stop looking at, your parents' apartment and stuff. Just move in there, I will be your landlord, you will be fine. Well, that little meeting saved our life. What we didn't know, this gentleman was also the leader of the German underground in our city. And he did a lot of helping us and keeping us alive. So we moved into that new neighborhood, and that's where that riot happened, where they wanted to beat me up. In 1935, I got into, first time into really trouble because the Nuremberg laws were given out. The Nuremberg laws were enacted, and suddenly Jews couldn't do this and couldn't do that. So, for example, Jews and Gentiles could not meet on in a social matter. If it was punishable by prison sentences, and the Jewish part of it, he got usually 3-4 years in prison, and after that he needed re-education and was sent to predecessor of the concentration camps. They were internment education camps, they called it. Jews were sent there, and very few got out alive. Within a few months, they were re-educated because they were dead. So I lived now in a country where I was very much handicapped. I had no friends but Jewish friends. Christian children stayed away from me because it was a problem. Other Christian kids would attack them if they were friendly with me. I was sitting separate in school and in a separate seat. I remember the teacher told me he was sorry, but I had to sit somewhere in the back away from the other children. So that went on till 1937, and the teacher on the first day of school called me up and said, well, you have to leave. You are not anymore eligible for high school, for school, and goodbye. I'm very sorry. Jews don't need an education because Jews don't have any upper class professions. And this was true. The Nuremberg laws forbade Jews to go to college, and college would not admit them. Jewish lawyers and doctors were only allowed to deal with Jewish clients, and over a period of about 2 years with nobody who was not Jewish. Also, the Nuremberg laws made it quite clear that Jews were not liable citizens. You could not be witness in a lawsuit. You could not sue a German. A German could sue you, but you couldn't sue a German. Even if he stole from you, hit you, and said, Jews were second-class citizens. They had some kind of sort of Jewish school, and I went to that, but basically I was educated by engineers, chemists, and all kinds of other academics which had nothing better to do. The old Jewish employees who had been fired had nothing better to do, and they took a few children and educated them. So in a way, I learned actually much more than I would have learned in school. But then things went on till 1938. Early in 1938, the German government showed its real face. And so they suddenly arrested all Polish Jews which lived in Germany. And that's a long story. I hope somebody asked me a question, explain how those many Polish Jews who didn't speak Polish spoke German and had never been in Poland were suddenly arrested and overnight sent to Poland. What the government did in August 1937 was arresting all Jews early morning, sometimes 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, went to their apartments. They were allowed to get dressed and take 3 German marks with them, which at the time was about 10 German marks, which was about $3 per person. And what they were wearing on it, they were collected in a ballroom, and that happened all over Germany. And about 40,000 of those people were transported to the German-Polish border and at gunpoint told, go to Poland. This was happening about 4 o'clock in the morning. Polish border guards had no idea what was happening, and they felt apparently they were under attack, and those masses of people suddenly in the morning hours appeared at the border, and they opened fire. Now, in that group, there were old women, old men, babies, pregnant women. There were some casualties. People turned and tried to get back to Germany. The Germans chased them back, and then light became, when it became day, the Poles apparently realized what was going on and opened the border and let the people in. They might have been anti-Semitic, but there were no murderers. So the result of it was that you had about a few hundred casualties. People were killed by fire. Not that they were especially aimed at. I mean, they were just shooting into the masses of people who were arriving, and so they left everything behind in Germany, and it was confiscated, but it created outright the first really anti-Semitic problems in Germany. Between those people who were sent to Poland was an elderly woman who had a son who lived in Paris. Now, somewhere in August, this guy took a gun, went to the German embassy in Paris. And I mentioned his mother was killed on the way into Poland. He went to the German embassy and shot the second highest ranking employee of the embassy. And it was sort of a strange situation. His name was von Rath. The question was, how did that guy, a 16-year-old fellow, get a gun in Paris where you couldn't have a gun as a civilian, especially not as a foreign resident, and go into the German embassy, which was well protected and nobody could enter, find the office of that found the office of the German official, the highest ranking officer in there and shot him. It came out there was some homosexual relationship between those two. They knew each other, and he shot that. The next day, all the German newspapers, the Jews declared war on Germany. The Jews were no country, and the Jews were good Germans, very good German. If you talk about World War I, 16,000 Jewish citizens were killed in German uniform. My father was an officer in the German army. I was on the front for 3 years. So the whole story was actually pretty nonsensical, but the Jews declared war. And then something happened which is called Kristallnacht. You might be aware of it. German stormtroopers, which were organized by the government and protected by the police, stormed all Jewish stores, including most of the department stores which were Jewish-owned, destroyed them, burned down all the synagogues in Germany, and went into the homes of people and confiscated Jewish items, beat up people, and sometimes here and there somebody was killed. And and then the German government said the Jews had to pay $1 billion, or German mark, to the German government as indemnity for the damage they had done. And had also to pay for the clean-up. So in order that it was paid, they went and arrested all Jewish men 16 years and up. Now, we didn't live in a Jewish neighborhood, so what, I don't know, our landlord suddenly appeared at our home. My father had gone to work. How he managed that, I don't know. He ignored the whole thing. Our landlord said, "Where's Theo?" That's my father's name. He said, "I want him," he said. "Go to find your husband, bring him to me. I will hide him." And he knew that all Jews would be arrested. We went to the city, so all that mayhem, all the destroyed stuff, and it was, people didn't complain too much. I know the only complaint I heard, how could they go and destroy all that merchandise? They had confiscated it and distributed it under the German population. So if Germans told that they were not involved, that might be true. Many Germans were not involved, but nobody spoke up and said, "I hate that," except the only German I heard who said "I hate that" was that landlord of ours. So well, we went to my father. I remember still my father puffing his chest out and said, "I don't have to worry, I'm a reserve officer." They wouldn't arrest a reserve officer. He came pretty late home, and we just had finished dinner, and the doorbell rang, and there were 2 Gestapo men, and my father was arrested. I was taken to the police station, and apparently our landlord had watched that from outside. He came to our apartment, and I said, "Why didn't you tell your idiot husband to come to my apartment? I would have hidden him." All those Jewish people, they arrested about 30,000 Jewish people all over Germany, and they ended all up in different concentration camps. And where they released them as an indemnity of those 100 billion mark was paid. And they confiscated his banking accounts and everything. So most of the Jewish money, they could get their fingers on. They had. My father came home after 3.5 months, and he was a very elegant dressed man usually. He came home like a bum, dirty, all the hair shaven off. It was horrible. some of the neighbors sort of expressed their disgust that this was done to him, because he had grown up in that neighborhood. Most of them knew he had been a German officer. So, well, I know our landlord came over to talk to my father. They had a long talk. And my father promised him it would never happen again. He would follow the instructions he gave him. Now, this landlord, I have to mention, was the head of the War Veterans Organization, and he was not a Nazi. So, anyhow, my father had his job was to close down Jewish businesses which were not allowed to practice anymore. And I found out after the war, he disappeared to Berlin for a few days. They had, he and another guy, they were accountants, and they had falsified the books of the Jewish community and somehow managed to get a big amount of money into out of the bank accounts, and booked it away, and it was sent to Holland and from there to England, and after the war it was returned to the Jewish community. And nobody knew about that. I know my father had done something. He came back, and well, Jews were now not citizens anymore. They had to work in hard labor, men and women. Together, everybody from 16 to 65 had to work for 10-hour shifts in the city parks and so on. If you did not show up, you ended up in a concentration camp. Sorry. And somehow our landlord managed to get my father's and my mother's name, keeping out of the list of people who had to work. He got all kinds of assignments which were in his profession, and so he did not have to work, but at time got close to September 1st, 1939, and World War I started. And would you believe it? They rearrested my father, this time as a foreign national. Now, this time I got more than our landlord got met. About 5 guys from the war veterans went to the police station and got my father out. I mean, how they managed that, we knew our landlord had some influence. He belonged to one of the blue blood families of town, but still they managed that. But they were told it's only for a little while. We will arrest Mr. Blaustein again, and it was sure dead. He got arrested, and 3 months later he was dead in a concentration camp. And so I told my father he had to go underground, and he disappeared. I think my mother knew where he was. We did not know. I had an older sister. She had to start to work in a Jewish retirement home. He was 16, and I was at home with my mother, which unfortunately was pregnant. Here was I, a boy not yet 13, the only guy in the family who was with a pregnant mother. German hospitals didn't take Jewish women. So now, my mother was under high stress. So our landlord came again across. He found a midwife. He told me where I could get that midwife and bring her to our service. My mother went into labor. this 12-and-a-half-year-old boy was running to get a midwife, and I think that was the most horrible experience of my life, if I think back. Something went wrong with it at birth. The midwife needed 2 more hands. She was afraid to get anybody in. I was in the room helping my mother give birth to my sister. Now, if you can imagine that, a 12-and-a-half-year-old boy. My mother never talked with me about it. She couldn't, apparently. But I did my job. Never forgot it. So my father was gone. I did not know where he was. I suspected my mother did, but she would not talk about it. She was kept off those work rolls. I had to work in a defense factory, but Jews got only half ration cards, so we didn't have enough food. Now, my mother was able to supplement it because she had a salon for dressmaking salon until the Nazis closed it. But she made still dresses for people. She was an expert in taking old dresses, taking them apart, and making new dresses about it. And the payment was usually in food. However, I felt I should do my share too, and there was a lot of land in the Jewish cemetery outside the city. And I started a yard there, grew potatoes, tomatoes, you name it, I grew it, and it was our vegetables. And it was pretty good. But somehow, one day I was out there working on my potato patch, and the guy who was running the cemetery, which that wasn't his real job either, was an attorney by profession, but Gestapo had forced him to do that. He appeared at my potato patch, had an arm in a sling, and said, "Can you dig a grave?" Now, I was by that time 30, a little bit over 13 years. I knew already whatever was needed, you did if you could do it. So I said, okay, let me try. So he had 2 bodies which had to be buried. 13 years old, I dug 2 graves. The evening, some of the people, men who worked in the factories, or wherever they worked, came and we buried those people in the graves I had dug. I went the next day to work again in my factory job, and there was a phone call. I should come to the office. The Gestapo wanted to talk with me. Well, I have to admit I had my heart in my pants because the Gestapo didn't come for you unless they wanted something nasty from you. So I came there, and that boss of the Gestapo, I could see he enjoyed my fear. And he said, "I understand you are digging graves." I said, "Well, you know, it had to be dug, so somebody had to do it." He said, "Yeah, I know. You go out to the cemetery. You are now the new cemetery guy." And I said, "What happened to Mr. Garber?" "Oh, we don't need a Jew with a broken arm. He is on his way to the concentration camp." I got his urn with his ashes 3 weeks later. I buried it. So I became the grave digger of the cemetery. And I had to pick up bodies. I'm 13.5 years old. And I started that. And there was no question. I had to get the bodies in a coffin on a ship cart. They didn't allow us to use motorized vehicles or even horse-drawn carriages. So I grew up very fast. I was a cemetery guy. Now, I got even with them a little bit. They invited me in '97 to the city as a guest of the city. They showed me the new things they had. They showed also television crews came along with newspapers to film that. And we got to the cemetery. They showed me how nice in shape it was, and I couldn't help it. I said, I dug this grave, I dug this grave. I told the reporter they were around me, and it was that evening on the evening news. The mayor of the city didn't like that I had done that. I said, you wanted me to say the truth, didn't you? I didn't lie. So anyhow, that was, but a time came when our landlord came and told my mother and me, he has to disappear. I became 16 years old. He said, they will arrest him and kill him. You know how that goes here. So I understood, and I went underground. Now, I was not yet entirely 16 years, and it wasn't easy to live on the run and hiding, but I somehow managed, and I traveled all over Germany. I had papers that I was a Hitler Youth leader who was instructing in other Hitler Youth in other cities and thing. That went nice, pretty good. I had to move every 2-3 weeks. I stayed with people, but the moment neighbors or so asked, who's that guy who was staying with you? I had to leave because I was passed off as a grandson or a nephew or something like that, but you couldn't have that for a longer time until the police came and asked, who is that guy? So I had to go from place to place. In September 1944, I was buying a newspaper, and irony of all ironies, I got arrested by the Gestapo. They thought I was a deserter from the German army. Now, a deserter would be hanged before sundown. In order to save my life, I had to tell them I was a Jew. Germans are law-abiding. Jews are killed in concentration camps. So they had to bring me to the police station, and it took a while till they could arrange a transport. It was already October, and I arrived in Buchenwald in October. And that's where that misunderstanding comes from, that I was in Buchenwald. In Buchenwald, I had a name, and I found this guy who was a cowboy, and he told me bluntly, they will kill you tomorrow morning, they will hang you, and all of us will have to watch that. The only way you can stay alive is you have to die right now. Now, I can imagine what a 16-and-a-half-year-old guy, you have to die, I got shaky. He said, no, not really, we pretend. They had the body of dead prisoners there. He was a little bit older than me, but he was Italian, a Tyrolean. The Tyrolean are bilingual, they speak German and Italian. And they took his number off his uniform, took my number, put it on his side, and I got his number. And the next morning, they put his body out. They called it up with Blaustein instead. He died last night. So but they were worried somebody might recognize me and turn me in. So I was only a day and a half in Buchenwald, and then I was sent out to a labor camp outside at Reuchlitz Heights. And I was pretty hard. We built factories, a gasoline factory. Very slowly. We tried to sabotage it wherever we could, but we couldn't do too much because they would hang you if they found out. And that one day, there were a group of Italian prisoners of war arrived for work. And they tried to make them take something out. I don't know what it was anymore, but they said they didn't understand. They were standing there and just looking. And they, the Italians, they didn't know what they wanted from them. Somebody, I hear Italian, he speaks German, he speaks Italian. Tell him what we want, he can go over to South Italian and tell them it's Italian. I thought my goose is cooked, that's the end of it. And I got there, the Italians still kept their military discipline. There was a master sergeant there, and he told me in German, very quietly, just talking Italian gibberish. I will say, see, and then we will do what you said. We will not turn you in, you can be sure about that. So they actually saved my life. They kept that charade for about, that was in October, November, they kept that charade till March. When I got sick and I would have died, but those guys grabbed me and were hiding me in a coal mine, feeding me and, until I was healthy again. I don't know why they liked me so much, but that Italian said, as long as we are here and can help it, you will stay alive. When I got healthy, I had already the American artillery. I knew they weren't too far. And there was some underground there. We actually liberated our own camp. But there were some French officers in there which collected arms that the German deserters had thrown away. And 3 days before the Americans arrived, they liberated the camp and acted like it was not liberated. I was hanging out with them, and I was a boy that sent into town to spy out what was going on. So, well, the artillery got louder and louder, and on the 16th of April, freedom arrived in form of the 141st American Division, the Timberwolves from the West Coast, but they gave you wrong information. But I had myself nearly killed by an American soldier who thought I was a German, because I went to look where they were, and I saw that guy, he has a rifle standing, pointing at me. And I knew enough English to say, you bring me liberty, and they come over. And and that ended the war. And next day we were free, and it took me another 2 weeks, 2 months to come home. So this is my story. I was not in Buchenwald more than 3 days, but I didn't have fun during that time. It was as bad in the other places.
But it's just a joy to have you here, sir. Thank you. And there are questions, I'm sure. And one of the questions that a young student asked me, and he was not sure if he could say it, but he was timid, and he said, asked our guest, how did he keep hope alive in those years?
I didn't know what alive.
Hope. Hope. How did you keep hope in your life going, sir?
Well, I think human beings keep hope as long as they can. I mean, even at the worst time at the concentration camp, I was thinking for ways out. Somehow you manage. Now, not everybody was as lucky as me. Most people died anyhow. But that's why not that many people committed suicide. Because people wanted to survive if there would be some tough days.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions, please.
I'm Colson Liu. I'm a history major, and one of the questions, I think this is something I'm also kind of, it might be a lot to ask, but what was the thoughts going in your head when you got there, they gave you your number, and they told you you were going to go work?
You don't think very much. You accept, you know there's no way out, but at each stage you look for some advantage and hope somewhere you can do it. And they wanted you to work a while, work you to death. So I, in a way, being Italian wasn't so bad. I was an interpreter. Okay. I don't speak a word Italian. I can say basta or something like that.
What was your Italian name? What was your name when you're pretending to be an Italian?
Oh, my name was Luigi, by the way.
I know more questions. Come on, y'all. Over here. Introduce yourself.
Thank you for your time. My name is Dylan Walker. I'm a junior here at Elmhurst. I'm also a history major as well too. Going through a dark moment, experiencing such a social atrocity against your people. Did this event make you want to speak out more against social issues and become more spoken against social injustices to help fight for other people?
Not really. I did not want to live the life of a concentration camp survivor. I wanted to become a normal person again, and I tried to bum around the first few weeks until my father came home, looked what I was doing, and told me concentration camp survivor is not a profession. What do you want to do in life? And, I became an engineer. And when I got my master's degree, I went to Israel, and I was for 4 years there. I was an officer in the army. And then they looked for engineers here for the interstate program in the United States. I came, and that's how I ended up here. I have been a chief engineer, and I did pretty well. But I didn't even want to talk about the concentration camp until I was about 75.
We have a question over here, sir.
Hello, my name is Karen, and I have thought about this a lot, that my picture of Jews in Europe during the time of the war is that they were all very religious people. And it sounds like maybe that wasn't the case for you. Did you feel like a religious person before or after these experiences?
Well, I didn't think much religion before that. I went here and there to a synagogue, but no, that was not the case. However, I became a modern religious while I was still in college. And I felt it as a duty. I gave even bar mitzvah lessons to younger kids who had no idea about Hebrew, and I could write and read Hebrew. So I didn't want to be anything else but a Jew.
So in light of that question, I bet you have some great stories about Rabbi Bob, your son. You don't have to answer that. We have a question from one of our young ones back here. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Tyler Malmgren. I don't go here. My question was, after the Holocaust and when the Americans came to the concentration camp, how did you feel after what had happened and what you witnessed?
Can you repeat that? I can hear it here.
So, how did you feel after the Americans liberated you?
Oh, well, that was very interesting. They had not much interest in me, and so I didn't talk too much. You have to realize those were all guys in their 20s, and they were fighting a war, and that dirty guy in the striped uniform wasn't of great interest to them. They only asked me, do you want something to eat? That was their only concern. So but I saw them sort of a kind of Superman, which had clobbered those Germans which were in, believed that they were the best soldiers in the world.
Friends, I think you will join me in saying we've had an amazing, rich evening. Will you join me in thanking our guest, Ms. Marissa? One more time. Thank you.
It's wonderful.
And as the son-in-law helps his father down, father-in-law, can't pass up this.
No. When our children were little, I asked my father-in-law for plans to build a sandbox for them. And he said, he was an engineer. So he sent me these plans and he said, these are probably simple enough that even you can follow them.
There is a notion that we here at this institution always go back to, and I want to close on this one, the benediction, that we are indeed rooted in a tradition that the rabbi talked about that's Christian, but that we understand that to be much broader because of that foundation, to open the doors to all. And that changes the way we live and love and care for this place. So my hope, Chaplain, is that tonight you will have been touched by the mystery of our guest, his story, the work of a committee called the Holocaust, all the gatherings that come around to help with the life that is of the mind, yes, but of the heart and the soul. And so my prayer is that you will go forth with hearts touched, l'chaim, to life, with the soul, and be stronger to change a broken world. Thank you so much for all that you are. For the students that are still here, I need you to come on up afterwards to take a group picture with our guests. One picture is all I'm asking. Go in peace, beloved. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all. Come on up, students.